Alright, if Injustice 3 is going to work, it has to do something that the series hasn't fully committed to yet. Not another Batman vs Superman, not another Civil War, not another pick a side story, because we've already seen that in the first two games, Injustice 1 and Injustice 2. And if they go back to that again, it's going to be very predictable. So instead, what if the story forces every hero, no matter what ending you believe in, either the Superman or Batman ending from Injustice 2, to face something they can't punch, overpower, or outmuscle, something psychological, something inevitable, something that hits at the core of the Injustice universe, and that's actually control. But if you guys don't know me by now, I'm Mr. Frosty Flames, but you can call me Mike. We do anything gaming analysis, reviews, playthroughs, etc. So if you like that, and we do it in a chill way, if you like all that stuff, make sure you hit that sub button and join the Frosty Flames Legion. We're closing in on 1700 subs, so I'd really appreciate it if you guys subscribe. Anyways, back to the video. So before we talk about the villain, we need to address something important, and that's the two separate endings that Injustice 2 has, because both of them lead to very different worlds. For instance, in Batman's ending, Batman wins, Superman is in prison, and the world is finally stabilizing, but it's fragile, because the idea of Superman's regime, it didn't disappear, it's still in people's minds. And in the Superman ending, it's quite the opposite. Superman wins, Batman is defeated, the regime returns, and it's stronger than ever, but this time, it's not just fear, it's control. It's a world where crime is eliminated, but the freedom is gone. But here's the key. Both endings create the same problem, and that's a world obsessed with control. So instead of another physical threat, we introduce someone who thrives on that idea, and that's gonna be Psycho Pirate. I chose him as the main villain, the primary antagonist. And he's not really known by a lot of DC fans, but if you do know him, I'll tell you exactly why he works. Because he's not a typical powerhouse. He doesn't destroy cities, he doesn't use too much intimidation, he controls emotions, stuff like fear, anger, hope, despair, and in a world like Injustice, that's more dangerous than any other physical villain, because it would be super unique to have a different style of villain. I don't want something cliche, I want to think outside the box. I don't want something like Anti-Monitor come and destroy the whole universe or something like that, because I feel like that's so generic and it's predictable how it's going to end. I don't want another powerhouse coming to just inflict power, sort of like that Batman v Superman thing, because he takes over in a different way. Because instead of invading, Psycho Pirate spreads influence. Like, imagine if he did that in the Injustice universe, but slowly, quietly, and he began to amplify the worst parts of every character. For example, heroes become more paranoid, leaders become more controlling, and allies turn on each other. But here's the twist, no one realizes it's him, because everything feels sort of natural. And this is where things get smart, because it connects both endings. In Batman's ending, Psycho Pirate could feed off of the fear of the regime returning. People start demanding more control, more surveillance, more authority, and Batman slowly becomes once he once fought against. And say you took Superman's ending, Psycho Pirate feeds off of power. Superman becomes even more extreme, even more dictator-like, even less human, and even more convinced that control is the only solution. You see, in both of these, you have different paths, but the same result, a world collapsing under its own mindset. And this is where it's going to be very different in the hero conflict, because we're still going to get the hero versus hero fights, especially if Psycho Pirate is manipulating them, and that shows that they're fighting for a completely different reason. It's not ideology, it's manipulation. Characters fight because their emotions are being pushed to the extreme, not because they choose to, and that changes everything, because now the question isn't who's right, it's who's even thinking clearly anymore. And this is where Batman and Superman finally feel different. This is how we avoid the cliche, because Batman and Superman are not the main conflict, but they're the key to solving it, because they represent two extremes, control through fear or control through power, and Psycho Pirate exploits both of them. And so instead of fighting each other, they're forced to confront themselves, and eventually they have to work together, not as enemies, not even as friends, but as two people who finally realize that they both gone too far, and it shows that they both grow as characters. And at some point in the story, I want everything to fall apart, and not slowly, not subtly, but just like all at once. This is where Psycho Pirate stops hiding, the manipulation will become obvious, but by then I feel like it would be too late, because the damage is already done. You would have alliances broken, a lot of trust between the heroes gonna be gone already. Heroes have already fought each other, they're already injured, some maybe even dead depending on how NRS wants to go with it, and now even when the truth is revealed, no one knows who to believe. This is where the game hits its peak tension, because the real question isn't can they stop them, it's can they even trust each other enough to try to stop him? And the final act I would want isn't like a big Avengers game fight. It's layered. You might have, like, on one side, you have Psycho Pirate fully in control, pushing emotions to their absolute limits, and on the other, you have a fractured group of heroes trying to hold themselves together. And the final battles reflect that, not just physically, but emotionally. Make it so these characters are fighting themselves psychologically. They have to fight to regain control of themselves. Something like Silent Hill, but in Injustice. Maybe do a darker tone of the story where their past troubles are coming back to haunt them and they're getting raged, or they're just pushing themselves to their limits. Like Psycho Pirate is literally pushing the heroes to their limits. And instead of a typical beat the villain ending, the resolution comes from breaking his influence, not overpowering him, but resisting him, which is something the Injustice universe has struggled with from the start. I feel like the ending shouldn't reset everything. It shouldn't erase what happened or just had a random, oh, we beat the villain and that's it. Instead, I want something that leaves a lot of consequence. Some characters maybe just don't recover. Maybe some are just psychologically scarred or just don't trust their people. Some relationships just stay broken. Some heroes step away completely. And for the first time, there's awareness. Batman doesn't double down on control. Superman doesn't double down on power. They both change, not completely, but enough to move forward. And that sets up something Injustice has never fully committed to. A future that builds instead of just resets. And this concept could really open the door for a really strong roster. Of course, have your core characters like Batman, Superman, The Flash, Wonder Woman, but you could also have some emotional or psychological characters thrown in there. Like, what if we brought back Scarecrow, or have Raven, and have like Green Lantern with his willpower versus emotional control? You could also have some wild cards being thrown in, like, of course, Harley Quinn, John Constantine, and you could name the rest. And this story just works because it solves the biggest problem in Injustice storytelling, and that's repetition. Because if instead of a hero versus hero again, we get internal conflict, psychological warfare, and emotional consequences. Of course, with Injustice, you're always going to get that hero versus hero trope, but this one at least feels new. But it still fits this world, because at this point, Injustice doesn't need a bigger explosion. It doesn't need like an anti-monitor come in and hell let loose and like a bunch of chaos. I feel like it just needs a deeper story, something that challenges the characters, not just physically, but mentally. So whether you follow Batman's ending or Superman's ending, this story kind of brings them to the same place, a world where control has gone too far, and the only way forward is to let go of it. Because the real threat in Injustice was never power, it was always what people do when they think they're right. And that's just my take on it. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you agree with my Psycho Pirate story? That's something that I just came up and I thought was really interesting, so I thought I'd share it with you guys on how the Injustice 3 story should go. But anyways, feel free to comment your thoughts on what Injustice 3 story. I don't care if you're completely disagreeing with me. Type in your paragraphs. Type in what you think should be in Injustice 3. What do you think the roster should be? What do you think the story should be? Do you think the Anti-Monitor should come back? Do you want it sort of like a Crisis on Infinite Earths type story or something like that? But just let me know. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and comment. And anyways, thank you all for watching. Mr. Frosty Flames out. Ciao.